What's up, everybody? Josh Armijo here. I hope everybody's doing good and well and stuff. I got an album review to do for you, and I'm going to be talking to you about the new album from the band Hate Division, entitled Order of the Enslaved. This is released on Blasthead Records. Now, if you're not too familiar with this band, they are based out of New Glasgow, Nova Scotia, and the best way to describe the sound of this band would be a very politically themed, anarchistic, and overall creative hybrid of both death metal and grindcore. Yeah. This has been a band that has put out some pretty solid releases over the years. Most notably, the very first release that this band put out, their self-titled 2009 release, and then in 2011 with their debut full-length entitled Strategy of Obsolescence. I mean, really gritty sounding stuff. Really impressive musicianship, awesome vocal variations. Just had a lot of really interesting ideas being brought forth to the table. And a fun little factoid about this band, the guy that plays bass for this band, Paul, is also the guy who happens to run this label, Blasthead Records. So it's pretty damn awesome to know that the guy who runs a label is also in an active band himself. So shout outs to him for making such a great label possible and for being a part of a really cool band. Now we have this sophomoric effort from this band entitled Order of the Enslaved. It's 13 tracks and it clocks in at around 47 minutes in length, and pretty much this seems to be a moderate step up from the debut album, although I would certainly say this album has more death metal elements than it does grindcore elements. But the grinding moments of this record definitely are very well highlighted here, and I definitely think that makes for a very inquisitive and very entertaining release. The guitar playing on here is very crucial and a very important part of this release. I mean, once you hear tracks like The Divine Reward and A Controlled Extinction, you just get a lot of really heavy moments being brought forth with the guitar riff work on here. It's very spastic, it's very creative, and it definitely makes for this record to be that much more entertaining. Then later on in the album, you get tracks like Creatures of the Grid and Stricken, where the riffs seem to be a little bit more technical and a lot more chaotic going on here. The riffs have a lot of chaotic structuring being brought forth to them, and I think it's really incredible. Even to the moments that seem to take a twist that you don't see coming, like the instrumental tracks that happen to be on here, like World Descending and Dawn of Quiescence. Just the way the guitars seem to be a little bit more calm and peaceful, almost as if it ventures towards progressive sort of territories. It adds a nice little balance to the overall spasticness that happens to appear on this album. But for more likely than anything, the riffs that you hear on the main tracks of this album are really devastating, and it definitely is an entertaining guitar performance. Bass tone is on point, very well played bass guitar, very well heard, very well polished throughout this album's mix. Not too domineering, but still I think the bass guitar work definitely does get the job done here. Makes things that much more smoother throughout this entire release. Moving on to the drums, that's where you're going to get the death grind sort of influences on this entire release. You're going to get some really fast-paced drumming on here. I do think in certain parts of this album, the drums seem to have a hard time catching up with some of the riff works and some of the speed works. Some instances, the guitar riffs can be a little faster, and then it feels as if the drums try to play catch-up just a little bit. But I don't hold anything against what the drummer's doing here, because I think this guy is a really talented drummer. Very good double bass, lots of nice blast beats, great fills and rolls. Really well patterned drum performance, and once again moving to the more calm and subdued moments of this album, the instrumental tracks. I want to say on the track going back to Dawn of Quiescence, I believe that's a 4-minute track, and it definitely is the longest instrumental on here. It does showcase a lot of this drummer's talent, but like I said before, I think it's a really awesome drum performance. I definitely feel that there are moments where it feels like he is kind of playing catch-up a little bit, but still, I think it's a really awesome drum performance overall, aside from the little critique that I had. But moving on to the vocals now, The vocals are really, really solid here. I love this guy's vocal style, and it's a lot of different variations going on here. It definitely has an origin sort of influence to them, where it gets to become very, very low and guttural, and then you get to some really, really creative mid and high range kind of screams. I think it's definitely vital to the overall variety of this record, and I definitely think this guy delivers a very, very solid vocal performance. He definitely makes the listener want to pay attention to what's going on here. And I definitely think it makes for this album getting a lot better as you listen to it. So, like I said previously, I think this album has much more of a death metal influence than it does a death grind sort of influence. But for what's being brought to the table with Order of the Enslaved, I think it's a really, really awesome release. It's definitely going to be a grower. This is something that I'm going to have to listen to a lot more in order for me to let it truly sink in, because I know it's already going to. So, yeah, overall, definitely a more mature release than their debut full length. A lot more great things are to come from this band, and I'm very optimistic for them to have a very, very bright future ahead of them. So if you're into death metal, if you're into grindcore, if you're into the mixture of the two, Hate Division have something to offer, and I think it's a really entertaining release. So if I had to pick any favorite tracks, I would definitely have to say The Divine Reward, A Controlled Extinction, Creatures of the Grid, The Final Exhalation, Stricken, and the title track, which is probably the longest track on here at about 6.5 minutes. It's a pretty lengthy album, but I think it flies by at a very, very reasonable pace, and that's another thing to point out. I think it's a well-paced record too. So I'm going to leave you some links in the description box as to how you can get a hold of this album and listen to it. I will link you directly to their Bandcamp page where you can stream some selected tracks off of this album, and I believe this album will be streaming in full once it is set to be released. Therefore, you can be your own judge as to whether you think it's worthy of being purchased or not. And I will also link you to the Blasthead Records web store where you can purchase the CD copy, and there will also be t-shirts available to buy as well. So, again, the album is Order of the Enslaved by Hate Division. This is released on Blasthead Records. Definitely check this out. I'm going to give this a very solid 8 out of 10. Really, really awesome piece of very, very anarchy-inspired death grind from a really, really solid band. So support Hate Division. I'm going to conclude this review. Thanks a lot for watching. Thanks for checking out my channel. And until the next time, Army Hill out.